They say it takes more muscles to frown than to smile, but the question remains, is one of those muscles the brain? This is Smiling Friends characters dumb to brilliant. Like usual, we're starting on the lower end of the IQ spectrum. These are the dumb characters. At our lowest spot, we have none other than Rotten the Snowman. But I do want to clarify, I don't mean that as an insult. Rotten is at the bottom of the list, not because of any particular moral faults he has, but because, well, to be blunt, he just doesn't really know anything. That's not his fault though, because he's practically just a baby. A baby voiced by Dana Snyder, sure, but a baby nonetheless.
What's going on? What is this?
His reactions to the things that happen around him are always either unbridled excitement, like when he was ready to go to the beach, or absolute panic, like, you know, the second act of the episode where he spent the entirety of it screaming out of panic over the inevitability of death. His mental state is childlike and innocent, so while I wouldn't actively call him dumb, he's definitely the least smart character, which sadly is effectively the same thing. Taking a very close silver medal of stupidity is former US President Jimble. One of the go-to defenses of stupid behavior is the age-old phrase, "It happens to the best of us," and I'm not gonna detract from that. We're all prone to making dumb mistakes here and there, but there's a difference between a silly little mistake and a society-altering one. Likewise, there's a difference between an average Joe making a dumb mistake and the literal president of the USA making one. I'm sure you can see where this is going, right? Yeah, not to get too political or anything, but while Jimble seems like a pretty nice guy, he also seems like a pretty nice guy who should be nowhere near the White House. Jimble has all the social etiquette and political knowledge of an average 6-year-old. He's constantly covered in filth from his lamb-eating addiction, crapped his pants on stage at least once, and overall proved to be a really immature candidate. But those are his more minor offenses. Jimble also emboldened a war criminal dictator, showing off both his recklessness and his lack of world relations knowledge. Heck, he doesn't even know his own office, considering the fact that he tried to buzz in napkins by pressing the button that fired a giant missile. Though, in his defense, why would they put the intercom button right next to the missile launcher button? The fact that he wasn't literally born a few months ago is frankly the only thing keeping him above Rotten the Snowman. We can only really give him credit for making the sole smart decision to drop out of the running, which ironically was the one thing he did that actually gained him some votes. He might be an absolute musical genius, but DJ Spit definitely isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. He's a reckless criminal who almost certainly has some kind of drug addiction, on top of a whole lot of paranoia, given how worried he is about people getting into his head, man.
Get out of the head! No, nobody's
There's always the loose possibility that DJ Spit is secretly a super genius, and he's too shy to tell others about it, hence him telling them to get out of his head, but that's all speculation, naturally. If there's anything concrete that keeps him from being any lower on the list, it's definitely his practical skills. Seriously, DJ Spit may be a criminal, but he's a surprisingly skillful one. He's proven himself to be proficient at robbery, flying a military helicopter while shooting at US Air Force pursuance, and in the Frowning Friends episode, it's implied that he might have some sort of shape-shifting power. Even if you dismiss that last one as a quick gag, which is probably right to be fair, he's still somehow able to fly a high-tech government vehicle. DJ Spit is not getting a college degree anytime soon, but if it comes down to street smarts, he's definitely one of the smarter characters on our list. I really hope Siri called that hospital in time. Rounding out our bottom tier, we have Rex. Now, first of all, he called Glep stupid. That in turn proves that Rex is stupid to some degree. But there's more to the story, unfortunately for him. When Mr. Frog gets cancelled, Rex decides to boot him off of his own show and recast him. When he hires Glep based on his spitting gimmick, which seems innocent enough, and something all the others in the meeting room love, he demands Glep to stop it because it's too toxic. First off, dude, the show was about a guy eating another guy. I think spitting is less toxic, if anything. If that's not enough, Rex is delusional enough to believe that in doing this, he's saving the show and is genuinely shocked when everyone absolutely hates his changes. If this greed's also not enough, we have to take points off for his short temper too. You'd think the guy who worked with Mr. Frog and basically made him into the absolute menace he is today would know better than to piss him off, right? But unfortunately, Rex just couldn't contain his anger when Mr. Frog showed up to apologize, and he was turned into his frog demon's latest snack as a result. So with him being cancelled once and for all, how about we move on to the average intelligence characters? Go on and grab a reasonably unhealthy snack for this next entry. That's right, it's Simon S. Salty. Honestly, Salty just barely scrapes by into this category. I have to give him credit for running a successful fast food chain for years, given how Charlie remarks that he's been going there since he was a homunculus. On top of that, he gets bonus points for renovating his menu as a response to public outcry. It's important to realize when you're up against a strong opponent, and Salty, as unstable as he might have been, knew when it was time to compromise with the criticism of the media. Unfortunately, the guy's also pretty darn ignorant. He was concerningly dismissive over his food being cited as the cause of multiple deaths in the past month alone, which shows that even if he's a decent businessman, he's not the most trustworthy person. Still, we won't place him any lower, not even for his demise. It's not like he could have known that 7 people plus a burger were planning to kill him, right? Way up high above the flat earth, next are the aliens. Yeah, like Salty, these guys aren't the most in-depth characters to discuss. They're pretty much stereotypical frat bros with a distinctive claymation alien coat of paint. To their credit, they actually have a decent amount of creative intelligence. Their pranks are pretty darn creative, from using an LED from Alibaba to pose as a dimension of eternal torture to pressuring Charlie and Pim to blow up a planet under duress. Unfortunately, well, that's really their whole thing. They have the potential to do great things with those smarts, but they just use them for pranks, drugs, and parties. These guys could be stopping a crime or curing diseases, but they're more concerned with coercing people into putting CD holders up their butts. If you thought they were absolute menaces to society, say hello to Mr. Frog. This literal demon is a force of unstoppable violence and chaos with seemingly no rhyme or reason to the things he does, and while we all love him for it, we can't help but wonder if that really makes him smart, or dumb for that matter. On one hand, Mr. Frog somehow ends up on top no matter what he's doing. Although his career is nearly killed after he spontaneously vores a TMZ reporter, he literally eats a man alive on live TV and is inexplicably given back all his fame and then some. This guy did a worse version of the exact same thing he got canceled for, and he got rewarded for it. He's also elected president early in season 2 with no reason even given as to why he's running. This is all while Mr. Frog is committing some of the most heinous atrocities we've seen in the show by far. So the fact that he's getting away with all this while running for president is nothing short of a miracle, or whatever the bad version of a miracle is, I guess. But then there's the other hand. While Mr. Frog gets away with pretty much all of his crimes, which I initially was going to place him higher for, it's not because he has a Gustavo Fring level plan to get out of any bad situation he finds himself in. Like I said earlier, Mr. Frog seems to have basically no rhyme or reason to the things he does. He just does what he wants when he wants to. Oh, and there's also the tiny detail that he's constantly either high or watching Jimmy Fallon clips on YouTube, both of which are probably contributing to that clearly declining mental state. We're going to chalk Mr. Frog up as not a particularly smart nor dumb character, but rather a ridiculously lucky one. But luck is a part of success, right? It must have taken a lot for him to survive working with all those filthy... And the award for character I want to see most in season 3 goes to Wimbley. Seriously, if we don't see more of this guy's Smash Bros knockoff, that'll be a huge missed opportunity. But on to his smarts. Really, Wimbley seems like the most average intelligence guy on our list. He's admittedly a bit too prideful for his own good. He left a cushy deal under his boss at their company in order to pursue a solo career that sadly fell flat. This is still a sore subject for him, as whenever it's brought up in an insulting way, you might find yourself on the wrong end of his mighty Wimbley gun. Still, Wimbley is a decent enough guy who doesn't give up on his dreams. He takes opportunities to make his way through life, from making cameos for paying customers to almost selling the gang on his $5 Wimbley victory dances. He's even smart enough to give them not one, but 2 free samples, which is genuinely just good business, and shows that Wimbley knows how to let a product or dance sell itself. And getting into a Smash clone can't be super easy, so kudos for that too. He may not be a genius by any means, but Wimbley is a pretty sharp and ambitious guy who proves himself to be an opportunist as well. On the topic of average Joe characters, we have perhaps the only one who fits the bill even more than Wimbley, Doug, Professor Psychotic's brother. While he's quite obviously the more stable of the pair, Doug lands much lower than his baby bro for the simple reason that he doesn't really have any intellectually remarkable feats. Don't get me wrong, he's a respectable guy. He works hard on a construction site to provide for himself and his brother, and shows a lot of patience with him, even after he blows all their inheritance on a science lab. But while all of that makes him a pretty stand-up guy in our book, he doesn't really stand out on an intellectual level. The worst we could say about him is that he has an addiction to painkillers, and the best we could say is that he's decently well put together in general, neither of which really give him a standout spot on our list. Now let's go back to the very first episode to talk about Desmond. Right off the bat, Desmond gets a lot of points for having a remarkably cool head. He's literally holding a gun to his head for the entire episode, yet he still manages to keep up honest, open interactions with the people around him. When Pim finally asks him why he feels so forlorn after even the mighty Daveland fails to cheer him up, Desmond responds with a soft yet absolutely merciless critique on what he perceives to be the futility of life and fleeting pleasures. Thankfully, it ends up not being so black and white when Desmond uses that same cool head to shoot a Blibbly and save the smiling friends, specifically Alan, from a pretty gruesome fate. Desmond's no genius, but he's a decent guy who's good at what he does. Nearing the end of this category, we have Charlie's grandma. Despite only briefly appearing in the Christmas special, Charlie's grandma made an impact on viewers everywhere for obvious reasons. The main reason, of course, being her surprisingly vast knowledge of hell. Seriously, it took Charlie less than a minute of talking with her for her to reveal that she knows where specifically the devil is in hell. She's also a pretty cool-headed character. She was barely fazed at all by her husband being shot right in front of her, with her only reaction being a damn. On top of that, she didn't seem fazed at all by the fact that her own grandson got sentenced to eternal damnation. Granted, she could just be a sociopath, but I'm an optimistic guy, so screw it. High averaged, here it is. Closing out this category is Gilbert Gottfried's nemesis, the Evil Devil. One of those many claymation characters we see throughout the show, the Devil shows up at the end of the 8th episode, in which Charlie offers to make him smile in exchange for being sent home. Now, this iteration of the Devil is interesting. He's a total nihilist, seeing no point in doing his work if he won't be paid until his job is over, which is literally eternity, so he's never getting paid. Being able to deduce that is pretty smart, but he's also fairly cunning. When Charlie strikes a deal with Satan that if he can make him smile, he'll be given another chance at life, the Devil made the reasonable point that even after he smiled while torturing Charlie, he didn't really have to follow through on his promise. I mean, he is the Devil, lying is his whole shtick, and I'm sure that he's done way worse and more complicated things during his time as ruler of hell. Still, thinking that he could stand against the mighty Gilbert Gottfried is proof that his pride was absolutely his downfall. With that said, quickly, Charlie, take my hand. It's time to go to our middle category for the characters who are pretty smart. Okay, guys, now you're starting this category off with Shrimp. And no, I'm not going to talk like him for the whole entry. Ah, Shrimp, an absolute national treasure. What he lacks in social skills, he more than makes up for in his kindness and authenticity. Now, here's the bad news about that sentence. Shrimp lacks a lot of social skills. He's not the worst on our list in that regard by any means, but given that Shrimp was absolutely horrified upon seeing the sun for the first time in presumably years, it's safe to say that he's not exactly in touch with regular social norms. But there's good news too. Shrimp is unapologetic about his passions, whether it's his love for Mouse Quest or his former love for Shrimpina.
I never fully appreciated her.
This can sometimes result in him being hung up on the past, wanting to recapture his happiest memories instead of finding something new. But given how great he is at Mouse Quest, and how he inexplicably seems to have quite a way with the ladies, Shrimp has a surprising set of skills that will almost certainly lead to a successful, happy life. Now we have to give a quick mention to everyone's favorite Smiling Friends character, Bill. To the untrained viewer, Bill might seem like a totally inconsequential character. In actuality, though, he still kind of is. But that doesn't mean that he isn't smart. Like Shrimp, he's unapologetic about his passions, with a decent amount of knowledge about space, or at the very least enough to put together a UFO sighting group and seemingly act as the de facto leader. He also managed to tell from a pretty long distance that the UFO he saw was actually a satellite, which shows some pretty good observational skills. But he's not the best researcher, given how he had a theremin for a decent amount of time and didn't know until Charlie told him. Hopefully he's seeing all the UFOs he can in heaven now. But now it's time to talk about the man who embodies the Smiling Friends mission more than anyone else, Pim. In terms of emotional intelligence and book smarts, Pim is one of the smarter characters in the ensemble cast. He's trilingual, being able to speak fluent Spanish with an N, Spanish with an M, and English. On top of that, he has a pretty good amount of book smarts, particularly in the area of politics, even being able to work well with Jimble as a campaign assistant. He's also very emotionally intelligent, always doing his best to reach out and help the people around him. On the whole, Pim is a smart, caring guy with a good head on his shoulders, just as long as you don't take his dreams of the Enchanted Forest away from him.
I love the Enchanted Forest!
So why isn't he any higher? Well, simple. Pim is optimistic to a fault. He tends to put off his problems to be dealt with later. In the Shrimp episode, he put off getting a new pair of glasses and ended up setting Shrimp up with a human woman who wasn't anywhere near Shrimpina. This showcases that Pim is a little too trusting and optimistic, often not realizing that he's going about something the wrong way until it's too late. There are other times you can venture into toxic optimism territory. Okay, there's really just one, but my friend pointed it out to me and I can't stop thinking about it. In the first episode, Desmond tells Charlie and Pim that he lost his entire family recently, and what is the literal first thing Pim does to try and cheer him up? He invites him to a family dinner. Pim is a reliable asset to the Smiling Friends, but he's not the best critical thinker, which is going to keep him from landing any higher on our list. In terms of intelligence, we're going to name Charlie the smart friend of this duo. Charlie is mild-mannered, confident, and honest, all of which are traits that help him be a straightforward, practical guy. He's the perfect example of work smart, not hard. In the Enchanted Forest episode, for instance, a tree with a thorn in its side cries out for help. While Pim and Mip believe it's some sort of weird riddle, Charlie comes up with a much simpler solution to pull the thorn out of its side, which obviously works. If we had to describe Charlie in one word, it'd be practical. Sure, sometimes he lacks the same level of emotional intelligence as Pim, but he makes up for it by always having a plan in mind, whether that's getting in contact with a celebrity to help their client, like Jimmy Fallon with Mr. Frog, or Bill Nye with Rotten the Snowman, or just multiple ideas to help them out himself, like taking Shrimp to the gym and to multiple fashion stores. Charlie is a smart guy, and his more cynical attitude makes it easier for him to detect a bad situation than it is for Pim. He also knew what a theremin was, which automatically gives him a point over both Pim and myself. Oh, yeah, and it's also implied that he's bilingual since he started speaking to Pim in Spanish during Brother's Egg. Now let's give a quick mention to Filmore. I wonder if this is that one dude Dib was always talking to online in Invader Zim. In any case, Filmore is an interesting character. He acts like a deranged conspiracy theorist, believing the Earth to be flat and protected by an invisible glass dome.
I don't just believe it, I know it!
While this is revealed to be little more than a goofy bit on his part, as he revealed when a real UFO attacked, he turned out to be right about the Earth being flat and covered by a dome. It's a shame that he's in jail for the police not believing him that his friends actually were abducted by a UFO. If any side character has a villain arc motivation, it's him. Closing out this category, we have Salty's mascots. These guys each get a decent bit of time to shine throughout the episode, but with the exceptions of Grease and Century Egg, they all have just one thing in common. They all killed Simon S. Salty. I know what you're thinking. What does that have to do with intelligence? The answer is simple. All 7 of these other mascots managed to kill the same person in the same night without any of the others noticing. They were also quick on their feet to jump at the opportunity to flee once the Century Egg security footage revealed that Salty was already dead, meaning they technically hadn't killed him, so these guys are pretty sharp. And they should really not be out on the streets. Where's Prisoner Frog when you need him? Now let's get to the real heavy hitters, intellectually speaking. These are the super smart characters. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, even if that apple happens to be Britney. I guess we haven't seen a full potential iteration of Smiling Friends as Satan yet, but if his daughter is any indication, he's probably got some killer leadership skills. By leadership skills, I, of course, mean brainwashing. Britney has spent centuries manipulating powerful men throughout history, thereby making them subservient to Satan, whether they realize it or not. Why she decided on Smiling Friends as a target is anyone's guess, but she came pretty far before Charlie, Pim, and Alan figured out her true identity. While Britney is one of the more successful antagonists so far, we have to dock some points for how little effort she put into hiding her true nature. It's also worth mentioning that she has zero composure given how she literally jumped out of a window into a thorny bush and died because she was called out. Let's just be glad she didn't get her hands on the CEO. Wimbley's former boss has been the head of his company for years, and you've got to give him some credit for that to some extent. I mean, sure, he spends most of his time eating chicken nuggets in his office, but he was able to develop a whole new mascot that was capable of nearly hunting Wimbley and company down. That said, for a CEO, the guy is really bad at business. He doesn't know when to start nor when to quit. Here's what I mean. When Wimbley came back after hoping for a new game, CEO turned him down, only to go after him when he revealed his plan to make an independent Wimbley game. This shows that while the CEO is indeed smart enough to see the potential of a Wimbley game, he'd rather sit on his IP and do nothing with it. As for not knowing when to quit, well, come on man, did you really think insulting James was a good idea? While he had a giant knife in his hand? At that point, he was just asking for it. Now we have the Smiling Friends' temporary rivals, Grim and Gnarly. These two might be jerks, but they're jerks who are really good at what they do. They're definitely pretty observant, seeing how they were always one step ahead of Charlie and Pim when it came to making their clients frown rather than smile. On that note, this is where they prove to have some decent book smarts. In the 3D Skelton scene, for instance, they casually drop the bombshell that all of Earth's helium will be depleted in just 15 years or so, which was genuinely true at the time, mind you.
Is that actually true?
Mwahaha!
But they aren't just observant. The Frowning Friends are absolutely cutthroat businessmen. They managed to almost destroy their competition by convincing Alan and Glep to join their side, and Grim even tried to softly convince his crowd to eradicate all the Puerto Ricans on the planet, though he rescinded this when they were naturally confused. Still, it shows that he's ruthless enough to try and brainwash his followers and smart enough to divert their attention when it doesn't seem to be working. Still, they don't seem prepared for disaster, if Grim's reaction to Mr. Boss nearly shooting him was any indication. But while Frowning Friends were formidable foes, they weren't any match for Mr. Boss. Okay, I'll get the obvious out of the way first. Mr. Boss is crazy. Oogly goo, even. He's an unpredictable force of nature, one moment being the most chill and lighthearted character in the show, and the next being a borderline psychopath. This unstable personality of his keeps him from reaching our top tier, and at face value, he might seem like he's too high even being here, but just hear me out on this one. The Boss is the head of Smiling Friends, one of the most influential and successful charities in his universe. We know this because Britney, who's notorious for targeting and draining powerful men, targeted Mr. Boss and nearly absorbed his entire soul. He manages his company well despite his erratic nature, and with only 4 employees, he's made countless people smile, all without sacrificing company morale. Due to his massive power and influence, he's managed to write an entire manifesto about who knows what, and he always seems to have a plan. Whether it's a good one or not remains to be seen, but still. Regardless, Mr. Boss knows how to come in clutch. The best example of this has to be the magical red jewel episode, in which it's revealed that he not only keeps cyanide pills on him just in case, but that apparently he bought this magical jewel to allow his 18-year-old son Jason to turn into a butterfly that secretes magical lean-coated glitter. Mr. Boss lives in a world of complete and utter chaos that would make even the most level-headed guy stressed out, so the fact that he's anything less than a total psychopath is a testament to how strong-willed and sharp he is, but he's still very much unstable, so we wouldn't quite call him a genius per se, but he's definitely one of the smartest characters in the ensemble cast. Landing just outside of our top tier is is the nose-nommer himself, Alan. Acting as the sort of logistics guy around Smiling Friends' HQ, Alan makes up for his total lack of social skills with his book smarts. First off, he's highly organized and efficient, able to count almost 100 paper clips by just glancing at them for a second. As a much more impressive example, in the Season 2 finale, Pym Finally Turns Green, Alan casually drops the bombshell that Alan himself built Mr. Boss's iconic rocket boots. This claim is immediately backed up by the boss himself, which proves that Alan has practical craftsmanship skills and a good bit of scientific know-how as well. Alan is also remarkably good at picking his battles. Take the first episode for instance. When he sees a guy looking at something on his computer inside the HQ's walls, he realizes pretty quickly that it isn't worth starting a fight over, moving on to find his precious cheese. Alan is level-headed and practical in every sense of those words, and it takes a shocking amount of trouble to make him finally lose his patience. There aren't really any intellectual weaknesses we can cite him for, aside from him being startled pretty easily, so while we can't put him any higher, he's the perfect character to close out our penultimate category. Without further ado, it's time to talk about the top 5. These are the truly brilliant characters. There's no shortage of brilliant plans in this category, but perhaps the most successful one was that of Professor Psychotic. His diabolical plan to create life by injecting his own DNA into an egg in his evil laboratory proved successful at the end of the day, or rather at the end of the 14 months it apparently needed in order to hatch. Creating life can go very, very wrong, but thankfully, Psychotic decided to go about it in the righteous way and raise his creation, showing it all the love his mother gave to him, and then some. He's also practical, knowing when it's time to prioritize saving his own skin when his brother threatens to kick him out, but that leads into why he's only number 5. While he was successful as a scientist, Professor Psychotic is probably the most socially inept character on this whole list. Even ignoring his tone-deaf, insensitive response to Doug pouring his heart out to him, just look at what his idea of flirting is. How could that ever work? Landing just outside of our top 3, we have Bill Nye, the science guy. Yep, that's the real Bill Nye. Don't look it up or anything, just trust me, it's him. He's a beautiful singer, he knows everything there is to know about death and about science, but apparently he does not know everything there is to know about flying a hot air balloon. Bill Nye was tragically electrocuted to death by a power line while trying to console a snowman having an existential crisis. While that sentence is perhaps the greatest one I've ever read, it's also proof that Bill Nye is the kind of genius who can easily miss something right in front of him. The Bronze Medal of Brilliance goes to the Landlord. Now, even if we ignore the fact that the Landlord literally managed to somehow cheat death itself, he's still an absolute mastermind. This legend came up with what might be one of the most elaborate evil plans in history, all for one of the most inconsequential reasons. He managed to plan out every single detail of Alan's entire day just to lure him to the apartment for their famous weed, diet soda, and burnout revenge for the PS2 session. There's frankly a case for him to be even higher, but, well, here's the thing. After Alan is lured to his apartment, the Landlord reveals that he has a bomb strapped to his chest and threatens to blow up the whole complex if Alan doesn't comply with his demands. That raises one big question about how practical he is, because, why did you spend all that time and money on planning this if you had a bomb the whole time? I mean, in a meta sense, it's super funny, but as an objective reason, it's just not really holding up. This might be a surprise, but taking the runner-up position on this ladder of intellect is none other than the Evil Mastermind, Mip. Mip is a sociopath. He gains the trust of Charlie and Pym, who he recognizes as outsiders, by rescuing them from a witch. In doing so, he gains allies to help him deliver his specially made package to the princess, which, as we all now know, was actually a bomb. Yes, Mip was a deranged stalker who was scorned one too many times and decided that if he couldn't have his beloved princess, nobody could. Well, except for God, since apparently that's who he was trying to send her to. If Mip weren't cold and calculating enough for this alone, even when he was literally dying, he was smart enough to encourage Pym and Charlie to deliver the package for his sake, even telling Pym that he could take credit for it. It makes you wonder if Mip is really dead, or if even that was part of his evil plan. You'd think that such an elaborate idea would make him a sure shot for our top spot, right? Actually, yeah, so did I, but then I considered one simple factor of our next character. For those of you who have been keeping track of all the characters we mentioned, no, you didn't miss an entry. We really are giving the Gold Medal of Brilliance to Glep. Now, believe it or not, Glep is also bilingual. In the Christmas special, it's revealed that Glep can speak perfect English in the future, or maybe it's a Toshi from American Dad situation where he could the whole time and simply chose not to.
And Christianity was right all along.
But either way, as you can probably imagine, he's not number 1 just because he's bilingual, nor is it because of his ability to persuade people quite consistently, whether it's getting on the Mr. Frog show as his replacement or calming down a riled-up Smiling Friends break room after he was doxxed for voting Mr. Frog into office. Speaking of which, Glep survived getting doxxed on national television, but that still raises the question of how exactly he's number 1. To answer that, let's go back to the Christmas special. Here we see Glep reading the story of when Charlie went to hell to his grandson. During this story, story, he recounts how both heaven and hell are actually real and that Christianity was right all along. While it might just seem like a typical smiling friends gag at first, let's just look at this objectively. Glep knows about the afterlife. Let me repeat that. Glep knows about the afterlife. He's fully aware of what happens after death, knows the correct religion to follow in order to get to heaven, and this is barely related, but look at that photo in the background. This dude became president. Whether it's about the past, present, or future, Glep seems to know more than anyone else. If he weren't such a chill guy, that would be absolutely horrifying, but if there's anyone I trust with straight up objective knowledge of the supernatural, it's Glep. There's just one question I have left. If Glep knows that Christianity is right, then why did he apparently raise his grandchild as a non-Christian? Is Glep a sociopath?